partners in crime. Oh, boy. Okay, everybody ready? Tell me when. Okay, thanks everybody for coming out. We're here today to announce charges against 3 Oakland County residents, all licensed attorneys in the state of Michigan. The first named defendant is Ryan Jacob Fishman of Bloomfield Township. He's 32 years old. He's charged with 1 count of conducting a criminal enterprise, also known as racketeering, 30 counts of forgery, and 1 count of obstruction of justice. Also charged from the same law firm, which is the Fishman Group, PC, another attorney, Alexandra Isham, I-C-H-I-M. She's 33 years old. She's charged with conducting a criminal enterprise, 30 counts of forgery, and 1 count of obstruction of justice. The third charged individual is Mark Allen Fishman. He's 70 years old. He is the president and CEO of the Fishman Group. He's charged with maintaining a criminal enterprise and also 1 count of obstruction of justice. The continuing criminal enterprise charge is punishable by a maximum penalty of 20 years. Each forgery count is punishable by a maximum penalty of 14 years, and the obstruction of justice count is punishable by a maximum penalty of 5 years. The continuing criminal enterprise charge was arrived at because we believe it was an action, which I'll detail in a minute, conducted by an enterprise, in this case, their professional corporation, Fishman Group PC. There's a pattern of racketeering activity, that is that there's not less than 2 incidents of racketeering, and here we have 30 incidents in Genesee County alone. And the racketeering incidents have the same or substantially similar methods of commission. We believe these crimes have also occurred in the counties of Kalamazoo, Oakland, Livingston, Ingham, and Calhoun, and we believe that with further investigation, there could in fact be more counties that have been the sites of this criminal activity. We also know that the Fishman Group's website says they have operations in Colorado and in Florida, so it's possible that investigations in those states could find some types of criminal activity. Essentially, what has happened here is these lawyers do mostly debt collection work, and as you know, in a civil lawsuit, the defendant has to be served with the papers in order for the lawsuit to proceed. What we allege has happened in this case is the lawsuits were filed and given off to process servers. Those process servers make attempts to serve the papers on the named defendants in the civil lawsuits. In many of these instances, all 30 that we're detailing in Genesee County, the process servers were unable to serve the named defendants. They tried on multiple occasions at multiple locations and were unsuccessful. They then would give an affidavit of due diligence to the lawyers, and the lawyers, what should have happened is they would seek what's called substitute service from the court. Instead, these lawyers fraudulently took a shortcut and they would forge certificates of service showing that in fact the defendants were served when we know they were not. And then they would proceed to obtain defaults from the court, default judgments from the court, and they would garnish wages, garnish bank accounts, obtain assets that they weren't legally entitled to obtain. In short, these lawyers put a dagger in the heart of due process and victimized some of the most vulnerable people in our state. And it pains me to have to say that members of my profession would do something like this. Last thing before I give it over to Sheriff Swanson is to say this. All three of the individuals charged are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Sheriff.
Thank you, sir. In a case like this, it's vital to have a prosecutor work hand in hand with the investigators to develop the probable cause for search warrants, to see the case through, that variables are met within the charges. And we did that. The prosecutor and I, right out of the gate, we met, our investigators met. And I want to give special recognition to Mike Beer, the APA, that worked with our investigators, Lieutenant Dave Kennemer and Sergeant Becky Stadler. That team together brought us to where we are. This case involves a father and a son. A father and a son from the Fishman group out of Oakland County that developed a scheme over years and brought into their ring of criminality a third party, all of which, as the prosecutor stated, are lawyers. They stole, they embezzled, they lied, they forged, and they destroyed the lives of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of victims in at least 5 additional counties, totaling that we believe well over $1 million. As the prosecutor stated, these three and their scheme would take advantage of the innocence, and when I say innocence, the unknown that people have in the legal system, which many of us do that are watching right now, because they are professional debt collectors. In fact, they've been around since 1976. And searching their site, they have in their own words, quote, "We've worked to eliminate the room for human error in an industry where even just a, quote, innocent mistake leaves the door open for liability in our practice and our clients." That was from their own website. Well, this is by far much greater than a human error and an innocent mistake. When the prosecutor charges an individual with 32 felonies, one of which being racketeering, operating a criminal enterprise, this is their practice. They operate a criminal enterprise. There are 4 levels of victims in this case. The first and most important victim are the ones who never knew they were actually served. Victims like you and I that perhaps some condition of life changed the location of where we were living, put us into an AFC home, put us into the hospital, we lost an apartment, we lost our job, and for some reason you did not even realize there's an outstanding debt. I think everybody here can relate to maybe an error in your banking statement, or you didn't get notified of an outstanding debt. Well, that plaintiff would file a suit with their district court. It would be given to a law firm, in this case, the Fishman Group. They would hire a process server, and that's where the scheme took place. If they weren't served process, they would they'd be notified the right way by the process service company, but the Fishman Group would forge that process. They would forge the notification to the court. They would tell the court, which holds the law firm in high regard, that, yeah, we served them, but that's not the case. So these defendants, unbeknownst to them, their wages, their friend of the court costs, their stimulus checks, their IRS reimbursements were taken from them. There was no due process, as the prosecutor said. It was a true dagger. They are the number one victim. And there are victims out there, more that we don't even know than what we have identified. The second are the process servers. These are men and women that go every day to go serve legal papers for people, and they do it the right way. These people have been victimized because their process has been usurped. Their process of how they do their job has been underscored with fraud. The third is the courts, your court. The courts that we, the people, use to protect our rights have been victimized because they were defrauded by, again, a profession that was held to a higher standard. And fourth, the plaintiffs. There are plaintiffs who filed cases with this firm that were told that there was nothing collected, but yet it was collected. It just wasn't given to them. The plaintiffs, who now have an entire mountain of questions that they need answered, was their case adjudicated or not? And as a prosecutor alluded to, this spans multiple counties. Genesee County started first because we were notified by brave witnesses and victims. And it doesn't take veterans long to see that this is a much bigger case. This could expand to more cases and more people around the state and around the nation. I thought it was interesting to pull from their own site Google reviews just a month ago. Olivia states that he clearly doesn't look into cases because he was telling me I bounced a check, which was never, ever happened. And when I tried to explain my situation, he, one of our suspects, continued to cut me off and tell me, quote, "Once you study law, then you can come back and talk to me." Sean Bain just a month ago wrote, "Only getting 1 star because I can't give it any lower. By far the rudest, unprofessional people I've ever dealt with. They filed court papers, never informing myself or even sending a letter to where I live. They sent it to a house I was at 15 years prior, and no one there knows where I am at. This is a default judgment in my name, total frauds." Ryan Halsey writes, "1 year ago, they have involved my company in a debt collection by mistake. The gentleman that owes the debt never worked for my company. To top it off, they have the wrong company. I sent them a certified letter. I filled out the paperwork. They are threatening me. They want to enter a default judgment and send me to debt collection. What a bunch of BS. This absolutely has nothing to do with me or my company. Probably should file a complaint with the bar against them." And finally, Aaron Wells, 1 year ago, refuses to call back, continues to pursue money that I don't owe, attempted to call them and mediate the situation, never got a return call. They aren't interested in what's right, just what puts money in their pockets. People watching right now, we want to know the reason why. Why? And it may come out, but I can tell you on its surface, it's greed. It's simple greed. When we know from our investigation that these professionals in law use their profession to undermine people that had no voice, and the statements they made, not only did they not have a voice, they didn't care about them. They had no regard to them. Statements made about these victims, about victims maybe watching right now, were beyond degrading. And that's why they felt they could take advantage. I might add that if it wasn't for the courage of these victims and these witnesses to come forth, that we might not be here as soon as we are. You may be a victim of the Fishman group, but not even from Genesee County, because our media friends here have a wide reach based on what we see here. So we encourage you that if you have been victim of the Fishman group in your county, this is what you need to do. You need to gather your paperwork, gather emails, text messages, any timelines that you have, and you're going to have to do a little legwork yourself. Put it into a packet, make copies, write your statement out, and if it's in Genesee County, I guarantee we're going to fight for you. As the prosecutor mentioned, it's in Kalamazoo, Calhoun, Ingham, Livingston, Oakland. The same thing applies. We don't know how big this is. We don't know how long it's been. But we do know there are up to 1,000 or more victims. And these people have been paying on debts that they didn't owe. Not all of them, but a lot of them. These people would have made it right had they actually been served, but their whole life has been altered. I'm proud to say that the scheme is over. The scheme is over. They have been arrested, all 3 of them. They were transported to the Genesee County Jail. They've been arraigned by the charges that were issued by the prosecutor. The father in this case was arraigned with a $40,000 cash 10% bond. His son was arraigned and has a $160,000 10% cash bond. And Alexandra Ickham has a $160,000 cash 10% bond. I assure the victims out here that the people you see up here and those investigators behind will restore your dignity. We will fight for every penny stolen from you. We will return to you those sleepless nights, the tears you shed, and nobody watching who's been victimized here shall ever feel they have no voice. Thank you, and we open it up to questions. Many of them don't know. And give an example of one in particular. Once they make a rebuttal and they actually take action in their court, it was a common practice that the law firm would immediately send a dismissal in the case and make it right because they didn't want to be exposed. They counted on people not making a fuss. They counted on people not knowing what their legal rights were, and those are the ones they victimized. Yeah, they see that when they would go and they would file through their state employment records that they would be getting a paycheck and money being garnished. They would get their IRS refund back and payments would be taken. But I think it's important to note that the population we're dealing with, many don't understand, even know what their rights are. So they have to just take it. That's not fair. That's a vulnerable population. That's why we as lawmakers, not only in this county, around the state, around the nation, that's why we swear an oath to protect. And I wish they would have been able to catch it and stop it. But unfortunately, many times victims of any crime don't realize they're victims.
We're aware of one case in Kalamazoo County where an individual actually, I think he got a garnishment notice or something, or a default judgment notice. He went to a lawyer, and the lawyer looked into it. And the lawyer actually sent the Fishman group a letter saying, hey, my client never got served. Something's amiss here. That actually went to a judge in Kalamazoo County who went to Prosecutor Jeff Getting in Kalamazoo County. And an investigation has ensued there because of that victim coming forward, hiring a lawyer, and asserting his rights. Where our counts date back to August 1st of 2019. That's as far back as we're going in our charging. Well, anytime that you file false documents with a court and raise it, tell a court things that aren't true, that's obstruction of justice. By law, we have notified the Attorney General of this situation because we charged continuing criminal enterprise. I know that Prosecutor Getting has talked to an Assistant Attorney General about the goings-on in Kalamazoo. I have personally spoken with Prosecutor Karen McDonald in Oakland County about this case, and I sent an email to the prosecutors in all 5 of the other counties as well. You know, most lawyers do it right. Most lawyers don't take shortcuts and commit fraudulent acts. They do the right thing. If they can't serve, you go to the judge and say, Your Honor, we've given it a good faith attempt on 3 occasions to serve the papers. We need an order for substitute service so that we can either publish in a newspaper of general circulation or in a landlord-tenant case, tack it up on the door of the residence. The court rules outline what you do. And any lawyer should know that. If you pass the bar, you ought to know that. And I suspect these lawyers know that, but they decided, as the sheriff rightfully said, because of greed, to take a shortcut to try to get to the money quicker than normal. That's what we believe happened.
So then is it accurate to say that some judges were duped?
Absolutely.
The whole system.
Is this it? Just these 3, or are there potentially other people who could be facing charges? And is it possible that it could involve judges who maybe weren't sued?
Well, we certainly don't want to limit our investigation. This is only 4 weeks old, but we had to get it on quick in order to limit any more victims. So we believe these are the 3 that were the driving force. We have taken statements from other witnesses, but it's at this point just these 3. Otherwise, the others would be in custody. And I might add that this is just Genesee County. The other counties are not going to let their victims go without justice as well. And to your point, ABC 12 mentioned about a particular court document. I'm just going to show you, here's an example of one that's filed. They would file this document to the court And the court, as the prosecutor said, puts faith that they've done their due diligence on the back end. But this is a simple, ready for this? Copy and paste crime. They would take information here from other cases that were properly served, add it to what was not properly served, and file that with the court. Much of what we do in public service relies right here on doing it right in our heart. And if you have a rotten heart for people, you're going to find ways to take advantage of the vulnerable.
Where did you say you arrested? At home or in the office?
We had 4 search warrants that the prosecutor's office and the judges authorized. The first was at the 800 block of West Long Lake Road in Bloomfield Township. That was the business. And then we also searched 3 different houses, each house of the 3 arrested subjects.
Are they cooperative or are they obviously lawyered up right away?
We don't talk about statements that, by the Michigan rules of professional conduct, we cannot talk about statements that may or may not have been made by those who are charged with the crime. So we can't go there. But as to your question, there's no evidence whatsoever that anybody inside the system is involved in this at all.
Thank you.
Sure. When you mentioned some of these people in stimulus checks being paid and things like that, can you, without giving away these victims, are these people now like out on the streets as a result of this? Can you give an example of just how
Yeah.
horrible this was?
So we had a victim who was moved from her home to an AFC home because of dementia. And that service was done properly by the process server, but that case was fraudulently given to the courts where a judgment was against this poor elderly dementia patient. That's the kind of people that they took advantage of. In what voice do they have? So when they get their retirement check, when they get their maybe there's an IRS refund, and maybe there's some type of pension that their spouse received. Maybe it's some other form of income. The court deals with documents, paperwork, so they don't see the subjectivity of this individual. That's the kind of people we see. We see it, and you could spend all afternoon hearing stories of poor victims that we have notified. And this is one of those cases that we go back to where we don't even know the sad stories that we're going to hear from people who have been paying debts that they don't owe. And that, where does that money come from? It comes from their families. It comes from schools. It comes from all the things they should be paying, but yet they were scared to death because of the bullies that this group were, and the fact that they hid behind the cloak of their law profession, which is an honorable profession. And doesn't law enforcement sympathize with that when you have good intended people that are being painted with the same brush as somebody like the Fishman group? They are not what lawyers are. We've dealt with lawyers my whole career, and they are not who these gentlemen and these ladies are. And they took advantage of people who couldn't stand up for themselves.
I just want to add one other thing, and that is the sheriff made this point earlier, but let me just make it again. Many of these people who are victimized, they don't really understand the civil justice system. So many of us who don't work in it don't really understand what process of service is, what the substitute service is, the fact that you have due process and you're allowed to know that you're being sued. All of these folks in the shadows of life, they don't know how that works. They just assume, oh, maybe I do owe this debt, and maybe this is correct, and maybe I'm getting what I deserve, when in fact they don't deserve it. They are being robbed of their due process, and that's the part that's so horrible about this. And it's the most vulnerable people that they are, we believe, taking advantage of.
That's right.
Anybody else? I don't think so. Appreciate you covering it very much. Thank you.